What do you like? All of a sudden you turn to like 80s game show hostess, like, hello.
I did not sound like that.
No, you did the girl version. You were like, hello, hi.
Anna like
hi.
this to talk.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello.
All right.
You do it now. Forget it.
Welcome to Tripping on Legends, your campfire on the crossroads. I am Christopher Balzano.
I'm Deanna Mulhern.
And we are going live tonight. We're going to try to do more lives if we can. But if not, we've got a lot of interesting things coming up. But if you're listening to this for the first time, because this is episode 123, we actually have, because we just had to redo everything, we actually have
We
over...
should have did it on 123.
We have... Oh, what do you mean?
The date.
Oh, we should.
123.
We should. Well, with the way that trying to get tonight's show on the air, it might not actually get off until...
I think we started at
the 23rd.
11.
And I hope it doesn't, I don't have to wait till the 23rd to get off. But this is kind of an episode that was born in a very strange way, but planning this episode for the last week, and I know you were looking at my ridiculously thin folder on tonight's haunting.
It's definitely the weakest folder you've ever had.
It's a pretty weak folder, but there were so many things that were jumping out. Part of the reason
From
why
this folder?
About the topic, like there were a lot of
Why
things.
didn't you put it in here?
I'm glad you asked. The first is there's a lot of information that was just information. Like, look, I've got plenty of notes, right?
Uh-huh.
A lot of them were like, okay, this is just background.
Yeah, it's like not a ghost story.
So to be honest with you, what happened is that I don't have a printer, so I print out all of my stuff at my school.
Don't tell.
And they just changed the
code?
No, they changed the ribbon, right? They changed like the printer thing.
Yeah.
It's not a ribbon, right? It's like that big thing. And so it made me feel like, oh, they knew it was going dry, which means they're monitoring it. So are they monitoring everything that I print? And so I got a little nervous about, what's going on, sister? I got a little nervous about whether or not they were monitoring that I was printing stuff that didn't have to do with school. So I've been doing it sparingly.
Okay, I can print stuff for you.
Okay. But how am I supposed to take notes if you print it out? Like, I can barely get you onto the show, never mind.
Well, I've been here for hours. You could have done it right before.
Really, truly. Welcome to... I'm starting it over, by the way.
Okay.
Welcome to Tripping on Legends. I am your host, Christopher Balzano.
I'm Deanna Mulhern.
And I'm surprised, Deanna Mulhern, that you are not wearing your assisting Mr. Balzano.
I have it.
You have it? Okay.
Yeah.
So, we did a conference this weekend, and I got my badge that said Christopher Balzano, and they didn't know Deanna or whatever, and so they were saying...
I don't have a name.
They were saying assisting Christopher Balzano. So she's just my assistant.
You did offer to write my name on it.
We're on episode 123 of your Campfire on the Crossroads. Although we've just been redoing the audio because we had to get a new server and redoing the pages, and we actually have almost like 180 episodes. Wow. When you kind of factor in all the different things and all the different ways we've published episodes.
Did you put the animation on there?
On some of them, yes. Some of them have been. I know she's messing with me. When I can't be creative in terms of writing, when I've got writer's block, I edit web pages of the website and things like that. And yes, I put fancier stuff on the videos. We are live right now, but you can catch us on any platform that you get your podcast now. Wherever you listen to podcasts. Where do you listen to podcasts?
Spotify.
You can get it on Spotify. Where do you listen to music?
Spotify.
You can get it on Spotify.
Apple.
No matter where you get your
where
you get your audio content, you can get it. You can find Tripping on Legends. Please subscribe. Even if you've subscribed in the past, that subscription is dead. That subscription is dead.
That's the new thing I was talking about.
What?
When I was like the new thing, you were like, "Are you on there?" I'm like, "The new thing."
Oh, okay. Have you subscribed to the new Tripping on Legends?
Right away.
So you must be the other subscriber other than me that's on it. The rest of you guys, please do it. And of course, you can follow us on social media. Facebook is probably the easiest place. That's where we put everything. So facebook.com/Tripping on Legends. And then the Instagram is Spooky Tripping. And then we're also on TikTok, which I don't think you're on. Are you on TikTok? Because I don't tag you in the videos. We've been putting up some interesting, and actually TikTok has a lot to do
I
with
watch them.
a lot to do with today's episode.
I always watch them.
Because things have come. So you do have a TikTok though.
No, you can still watch it.
Oh,
on
okay.
Instagram.
TikTok is tripping on legends. We've been putting out videos that are like promotional videos. I've been putting them out for my books, things like that. But there's a lot of content that I've been falling into, and this episode has been weird like that. So, about a week ago, Della Daughtry sent me a link to a TikTok video about mysterious pianos in the woods.
Okay. Just out of nowhere, you guys talking about it, or?
No, she just saw it, and I think we had done the episode, which we're going to reference a few times. We'd done a few episodes ago about Stairways to Heaven. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
About the stairways that go into. That was when we were still potentially going to New Hampshire. And so she was like, "Hey, listen! In addition to these stairways, there are these pianos in the woods." And I was like, "Okay, what the hell is this?" And so I kind of fell down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's all these pianos in the woods. And this
It
folder
ends
has
up-
nothing to do with pianos.
Well, okay, so those are the articles that I didn't print out that I took notes on.
Okay.
So there have been these mysterious appearances all around the world of pianos just appearing in the woods, right? Like, it's not as if they're dumped, although we'll get to that a little bit of like, they much like the stairs, right? People can't remember ever seeing anyone take them out there. People can't remember seeing them the day before.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just go out into the woods and all of a sudden there'll be a piano.
Like a baby grand?
Like a baby grand, right? Or like a stand-up one. Like, I guess this has been happening for years in Sweden. Like, for 100 years.
Okay.
And when they see them, they sometimes disappear.
Okay.
Right? So between the time they go and get somebody, and they take pictures, they go and get someone to bring them back, and the piano's gone. Those pianos take a lot to move. Have you ever gone to like
I have a piano.
Do you really?
I have a piano, and we moved houses. You have to hire like a team of people in a truck and like pulleys, and they're like the heaviest
Right, it's
thing
like
on
a
the
big
planet.
thing, right?
It's
And
like
those are.
It's like the hippopotamus of the.
So now
instruments.
imagine dragging those into secluded places in the
can't.
woods. You
It would be
can't.
impossible.
And you can't move it quickly, right?
Yeah.
People who have seen them describe them as meshing into the woods. So remember, one of the things we talked about when we were talking about the stairways is that it doesn't seem as if, it seems as if almost like they're part of their natural environment. And part of that can be because they're old, right?
There's moss growing
there's
on
moss
them,
growing on and
vines,
stuff like
or
that.
they
So
go with
these
the flow.
pianos have the same feeling, but people have been there recently and the piano wasn't there. Then they go and all of a sudden it's there, right? And so what do you do? So imagine you're walking through the woods and you come across a piano. What would you do?
Play it.
Okay, that's where the problem comes in, right? I thought you were going to ask the natural question, which would be, are they in tune? When the people find them, are the pianos
you
in
have
tune?
to play it to find out.
You're never supposed to play the pianos.
Just like you're not supposed to walk on the steps.
Just like you're not supposed to walk on the steps. So it's one of these things where people have been seeing them, they disappear, don't disappear, but a whole folklore, which delves into a deeper folklore, which is what some things we're going to talk about, of this idea of like, are they placed there as traps? Right? Are they placed there, are they just abandoned instruments? Is it some kind of obscure
Like-
art project?
Like huge fairy leprechaun type things.
Yeah. Like,
But they're so big that it doesn't make me think of fairy leprechaun type things.
well, why not, I guess?
Because they're big.
But fairies can move anything, right? Like fairies can do anything, and
Fairies can do anything.
fairies can do anything they want if they put their mind to it. Well, fairies.
Okay, you
And
might not
I'm not
know
sure about the
this.
leprechauns.
You know what I meant.
No,
Like
I'm
that
with you.
Kind of,
I didn't even mean that sarcastically. I didn't even mean that like. Go ahead. What were you saying?
when was the piano invented? Fairies, I feel like is like an older.
I don't know.
You don't know.
How would I know when the piano was
No, it
invented?
seems like something
Alexa,
you
when was the piano invented?
The invention of the piano is generally credited to Bartolomeo Cristofori around the year 1700 in Italy.
Okay, so the 1700s pianos
No,
date back to
1,007. Oh yeah.
yeah.
1,700.
I think they really get their rise in the 1800s. Like I think of the
Yeah.
great piano
Baroque.
people, the
Mozart.
masters are in the 1800s, and I think that's when these pianos started to be seen because they predate 1900s. So the late 1800s, Sweden started having this tradition. Fairies
They dabble in like old things. I feel like.
love instruments. Okay,
Yeah, like the
I love that idea.
fiddle and
So
banjo and
let me ask you that. We'll get to that.
not like the electric
We'll get to
guitar.
that. We'll get to that. Right? Have you ever come across a piano, regardless of age, that didn't feel like it was old somehow? Like, I feel like pianos are classic things. Like, I could buy a piano right now, and I still feel
My
like
piano is
somehow
really old.
it would be old school.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they just have a general sense of timelessness to them, but of like this like
Like
old
diamonds.
time, like diamonds. So when you say you were saying fairies, you associate more with older things, but I think that's just like the next evolution of it. Like I don't even think it's
So these are like modern day fairies.
I don't even think it's like joking to say electric guitars, right? As we're gonna find out.
I just said that. I don't think
True.
fairies and electric guitars go together. But this isn't this doesn't have to be a fairy thing.
Well, I think it's important to talk about because really, when you're talking about like how else would the pianos get there?
Oh, so
These
I'm right?
ones.
You think
Well,
it's-
I feel as if it is. I feel like
Ooh.
there is some kind of like paranormal force because there is such a deep tradition and deep connection between fairy
in
folk
music.
and music, right?
Yeah, they're like a little
So we have like fawns,
hippies
for
of the-
example.
Paranormal.
Oh, we'll get to hippies.
Hippies of the paranormal.
Don't worry about hippies. We'll get to them. Fawns, which are often considered like the basis, at least physically, what we think of as the devil, they're associated with like flutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so flute music that would be playing in the woods and things like that.
Fiddles too, though, right?
Fiddles too, or
Yeah.
that fiddle sound. And of
Uh-huh.
course we have The Devil Went Down to Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
That's about a fiddle, right? And then there's all of this fairy lore that has to do with dancing, with singing, right? Like they say to you, like it's one of the Irish traditions.
Yeah, but
if you
pianos-
have that, remember that book that I gave you?
Yeah,
That I think you gave me back?
Yeah.
But I don't think you gave it back to me.
I did.
We were talking about fairies.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many stories in there of if you listen to the music, if you hear the music and you follow it into the woods, and you dance, you won't be able to stop dancing.
Right, like in a trance.
Right, you'll be in a trance, and
The music
as part of that,
hypnotizes
you will be
Yeah,
stuck
but
in the fairy
piano is
forest.
in that realm.
You say your piano's not in that realm?
I just feel like it's more like we walk around with fiddles and flutes and like piano is like
So the size matters to you, is what you're saying.
yes.
No, so I was years ago, like probably 20 years ago now, I was asked to cover an event at the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast
Okay.
for Jackie Barrett was there. That's how I met Jackie Barrett. And they were going to do a seance and blah, blah, blah. And I was doing it for a magazine. I think it was like Mysteries Magazine or some ghost magazine that's now defunct. And so I went there.
Like
and
most magazines.
there you go. And Jackie had set the whole thing up. And she had the seance and she had the Ouija boards and all the stuff that she was going to be using during the seance. And the lights were low. And then she hit it with the Moonlight Sonata. And the mood completely changed. The entire... And it was... We listened to that song. I have the video because of the whole possession thing that happened during this seance. I have the video of it. We were there for probably about an hour. And then afterwards she was talking. She never shut the music off.
Like the VHS.
No, 8. Like the little tapes like this, right?
Okay.
There's something about piano that I feel is even more...
I'm not saying it's not haunty.
Yeah,
haunty.
it's more haunting than that. Like I think,
It's haunting,
haunty.
but it just doesn't remind me of fairies.
yeah, but I
It's
think there's
definitely
something.
haunting.
I think there's something alluring about it. I think
It's more
that
like
there's like,
ghost spirity to me than folklore.
but then who's putting them out there, right? I mean that would be the thing. Like if there are these random
There's like a
pianos,
spirit moving company.
ghost piano movers.
Mm-hmm.
It's the spirit of someone who died moving a piano. But the lore about it is fairy lore. It is that
Okay.
you don't listen to the music, don't follow. Like people will hear, and this is something that is not. I remember reading the things they carried, and it's Vietnam, and these people are in a listening post, and they're in this listening post for days, right? And they're just supposed to be listening for the enemy and reporting back if they hear anything. But they're out like deep in the jungle, and they can't talk to each other, and they start to hear music, and they start to hear a party, and they start to like, and they call in all this artillery, and they bomb the entire place, and they don't find anybody. And he's like, you're just not gonna get it. Like if you're out there, you're just not gonna get it. It was there. Like there was something spiritual and supernatural going on there with this music. And I feel, from what I've been reading about these, especially these Swedish ones, it's the same kind of thing. There's a whole lore that is developed around them that they're trying to lure you into the woods.
Okay.
That there's something haunting and suggestive.
And that is fairyish.
And that is very fairyish, right? And they never have described. I wasn't able to find any kind of description whatsoever of whether it's like jazz time music being played, or whether it's like Moonlight Sonata being played for an hour in a very hypnotic, like rotative kind of way. But people say that when you approach the piano, it stops. So what's the first thing, like you said, that you want to do? You want to play it, right? And again, if you play it, it's said that you'll be stuck there, right? That you will be somehow forced to continue playing this piano until you just
Transported into this fairy realm.
right, like, and you're just playing for eternity, or you just keep playing until your body wears out and you
In like a
evaporate.
trance or-
Yeah, like in a trance. And so this lore has developed, and pianos are not the only instrument, right? Like 2014, Shoreline, Washington, piano mysteriously appears in the woods.
Okay.
Now, these American ones, the pianos can always be traced back to a company,
Right.
right? Like there's something in there. And in this one, and then another one in November 2008 in Halifax, Mass. Again, it's in the woods. And the piano tuning company has their information inside the piano.
And somebody got that close and got it?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because
Okay.
obviously there's not
They
the
just
same
didn't
amount
play
of
it.
lore.
Yeah.
There's no reports that they ever played it.
Uh-huh.
There, and in the Massachusetts one, I was able to find one of the
Is
articles.
there a picture?
Oh yeah. I
Okay.
posted them on our social media.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
Remember that when you
Uh-huh.
saw that on our social media?
Oh, that was actually one of them?
Yeah.
Oh, I did really see that.
Oh, okay. All right. Good.
I watched it.
All right. They were never played. They appeared suddenly. Initially, they were said to be like, "Oh, these were just dumped." But why would you dump a piano just randomly in the woods?
Right.
Right. All of them had information that could be traced back to like, oh, these are
Okay, so
maybe
what
the
happened
piano
with the information?
tuners,
Mhm.
maybe something like that. And the piano tuner was like, I have no idea why this is there. They thought maybe it was like a promotional thing, like a way to get them on the news and
Oh,
stuff
right.
like that.
Mhm. Was it the same
No,
information?
different ones.
Oh, okay.
Different ones. And so this has been happening, like I said, 2014, 2008.
Did these ones disappear?
They were taken from the woods.
People took them.
So they were removed from the woods
Okay,
by
so they
people.
weren't one of the disappearing
So they weren't
ones.
one of some of the disappearing ones. But it was really interesting that like they had this whole conversation that, oh, this has been happening. Both of the newspaper articles talked about, and then there was another, like the one in Washington, they talked about two other ones in the forests in Washington that had also just randomly appeared. The Boston one, I shouldn't say Boston, the Halifax one, talked about how that had happened in both Vermont and New Hampshire.
Okay.
So we're talking in modern times, this is happening. There doesn't seem to be made any connection, but it taps into that old lore of like going into the woods something's luring you in, some kind of music. Now, we've explored this before, and this is where the weird things come in. So I was talking about Kristen Evans Good earlier. She had talked to me about, have you ever heard of there being drums in the Hockomock Swamp in the Bridgewater Triangle?
Well, it is
And
indigenous, so.
I don't think there's any tribe that lives in the swamp, though, there.
Right,
But maybe a ceremony or something
yeah,
like
right.
that. But again, it was just a very interesting, like, week to be asking that. In the Bridgewater podcast, which is absolutely horrible, they make a big deal out of the Puckwudgies playing the drums in the Hockomock Swamp. So once again, it's this idea that kind of exists. And so that was like, I was like, wow, that's crazy. And then someone emailed me following up from this weekend.
She didn't get that idea from the podcast, though.
No, she didn't, because she had never listened to the podcast. And so
Okay.
whoever she had been hearing that from someone else it was in the Hockomock. How many times this weekend did you hear me tell the story about the ghost pants?
A lot.
A lot. A lot of people were interested in the conference that we went to, or I thought that it would be a good story to tell people.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a good story to tell people?
Ghost pants?
The ghost pants one?
Sure.
So one of our very first episodes, we went out to Holiday, Florida, and we actually had to edit the episode and repost it because we gave too many details, and Lori Champion, who's since passed, was upset because this place had been historically attacked. The paranormal sites had been like inundated with ghost hunters and investigators and vandals, and so she was like concerned about people knowing the exact location. So there was a lot of stuff from that episode that never made it to air.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was very clear in this area near Holiday, Florida, which has a ridiculous paranormal history. We were listening to drums. I mean, it was clear coming from the woods. Now, the woods there is not like the Hockomock. There's not Native Americans because it's like the woods are not nearly as vast. It's like someone's yard. It's like an area between the water and the cemetery.
Right.
There's trees.
It's like less than an acre.
And the rhythmic, yeah. I mean, maybe longer because it stretches, but like, not far back. Clear drums on the tape. Like on the audio that we got from it when we were in the cemetery, especially, and the whole and it's rhythmic and it's coming from the woods. So there's definitely this luring thing going on, right? And then it made me think of especially tonight's legend trip. This is all building up to an actual legend trip. Once again, one of the very first episodes, so I know that you've listened to it, and you guys can feel free to go into the archives and listen to it, was when we went to the Singing Manatee River.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever followed up that story with us? Like, have we ever talked about that, you and I?
A little bit.
So, there's this one place in Bradenton where...
That's where we went for the swamp thing, guy. Never mind, keep going.
I don't know what you're talking... All of those things are completely like... The thing that we went to, okay, for the swamp guy... No,
The movie, the old
me.
movie, The Swamp Man, the
Creature
Lagoon.
from the Black
Yeah.
Lagoon?
Was that the the Manatee River thing over there?
No,
part?
that was Astor, wasn't it?
Yeah, is that over there?
No, this is Bradenton, so this is right after Sarasota.
Those are other manatees.
It's Manatee County. Does that count?
Yes.
All right.
Go on.
Anyway, the story that goes with it is that there's two versions of the story. You'll know the story when I say it, because I know you've heard it 100 times. Me and during, like at libraries and stuff. Two of the stories. One of the stories is that this whole tribe of people committed suicide rather than be taken.
Mm-hmm.
So a whole bunch of Timucua committed suicide. They went into the water rather than be taken over by the Calusa, and their souls are all still there. And so there were these two people who fell in love. One was a Calusa, one was a Timucuan, and they would meet in the water. Their ghost is still seen on the river.
Olympic thing, right? When they were in the Olympics together?
Nope, just a similar story. That's Silver Springs.
Okay.
You're getting further and further and further north. You're almost there. And so he's like, will you marry me? And she's like, yes. And he started hearing the singing. And he totally flipped out, and she's like, no, those are my ancestors. They're agreeing to this marriage. Like, they're
Okay.
saying it's okay if we get married. And so people for years have heard on the shores of the Manatee River in this one section of Bradenton, they actually hear this odd, inexplicable singing.
With the drums.
No drums, just singing.
Mm.
Just us singing this choir. Now, I explore this in Haunted Florida Love Stories because I consulted two scientists, one of which was my niece, who is now almost an official doctor of chemistry. And she associated it more with the water and some kind of, if you think of like Alka-Seltzer,
Mm-hmm.
like, and people are hearing that, so you're actually hearing that chemical reaction between the rocks and the water, and so that's where the singing is coming from.
Okay.
And the other
Kinda like
scientist, Matt
sirens.
Muniz, would say
Like mermaid.
like mermaid sirens
yeah.
coming from, that's not a crazy association to make, right? Because some people have said
Yeah.
it's not that. The second story is of the butcher, Miguel Pascal, who captured a woman and held her captive in his cabin,
Mm-hmm.
and he strung the entire cabin and parts of the boat with like guitar strings and harp strings. Do you remember this
Yeah,
story?
I do remember.
And so she sinks the ship, and as the ship is sinking, like the wind is blowing
Yeah,
through,
through
and
the
it's
strings,
and that's what
yeah.
you're hearing. But it's still this idea that once again, there's music being played. There's no instruments. We can't see instruments, but for some reason,
Like when
We're
the
being
Titanic
called to it.
sank, they were playing the violins.
and so some people say in that area you can
Yeah.
still hear those violins being
Right.
played, right?
Yeah.
Good friend Craig Pace from he was with some of our North Carolina stuff. So I was doing all this North Carolina stuff because I was redoing the website, and then Craig's like, "Hey, how about this story that I covered in North Carolina called the Phantom Choir of Roan Mountain, which is on the edge of Tennessee and North Carolina, so the mountains between North Carolina and Tennessee." His website is North Carolina Ghosts. If you're into ghosts at all, you should check it out. It doesn't have to be regional. He just tells the press a really good story. Again, people in the mountain are hearing these voices. And of course, depending on your mindset, the story goes that it's either demons
Mm-hmm.
or it's angels.
Singing? People
Singing.
were singing.
Like clear singing, like an angelic choir. And some people feel that it is angels, right? Because you are in the mountains, right? You're in that perfect
Yeah.
place between heaven
Mm-hmm.
and earth and everything. They feel like the angels are calling out, but there also sometimes seems to be a more sinister tone. So the way that it's sung changes. So if you're saying it's just the wind through this or whatever, it should be a fairly consistent noise.
Right.
It changes enough that people say sometimes it sounds evil.
They have recordings of this?
I don't know of his. I don't know. I have not been able to ever hear a recording except for what we got when we went to the Singing Manatee,
Mm-hmm.
which was more of we got the ship, like
Yeah.
we saw the ship, as opposed to heard anything. To be honest, all of these areas that we're talking about. Now I can't be at least the Singing Manatee and the other one. They're noisy now, right? And so when you read folk tales about it, it's always no one hears the music very much anymore. You know, like society. But
So
the
you're
weird
putting
thing,
singing and instruments all together.
because I'm putting it music, right? Like
Mhm.
it's these music things that are happening, and there always seems to be it right? Because we should be able to capture it now. We should be able to get video of it,
Yeah.
and the story goes, "Oh, you can't anymore because society has now
loud.
changed everything, and we can't hear." But
Well, it's
when
too
you
loud because there's
right
interference or
when you go
cars
to
or
when we went to Bradenton, and I've been there a few different times for different reasons. When you go to this section, I'm going to disagree with everything they say. Like, yes, maybe at noontime it is. We went there.
right. We go like
We went there at
midnight.
like 6:00 at night. Actually, we went there at noontime because we actually went back there with the kids once, right? We did Tripping on Legends with kids there too. Sound seems to stop. You don't
mean other
hear.
sound?
Yeah, like you actually don't hear the cars.
Okay.
You don't hear the planes. It's this really weird, eerie lack of noise, almost like you're in a vacuum.
Yeah.
that we noted every single time we went there. And I've noted it since. Like I said, I've been back there after the legend trip. So it's not like society is trampled upon the vibes of the paranormal and killed the old spirits.
No.
Like,
They're
it's
not
almost the
going
exact
down.
opposite.
Yeah.
You seem to be in some kind of weird zone, weird area where you should be ripe to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
That said, we didn't hear it.
Like not a void, but like
A vacuum.
vacuum.
Yeah, like a
that's the
vacuum,
word,
and we made, which was why it became one of those things where it was like, oh well, this is so natural that the people would have an experience because it was geared up for it. We were waiting for something to happen. We had a visual thing. If you've never heard that episode or seen the videos of it, we saw what seemed as if it was a black ship coming out of the water as we watched it. But we didn't hear anything.
Well, it's just
interesting.
like those places, like the energy is different, so like the frequency, and that has something to do with music and singing and.
If you've noticed the last few times we've done legend trips, I've brought along a tuner,
Mm-hmm.
like a music tuner, like you would tune a guitar with, like by mouth, like the whoop, like the old school ones.
Yeah.
And I always do that before we start sessions, thinking somehow we feel like you're saying, because I mean,
Right,
we have a whole book.
I
I have a whole book, Haunted Objects, that talks about musical instruments. One whole
Right.
chapter. This idea of frequency and like what are we hearing, what are we not hearing,
Right.
but can you connect? So it seems like a
It
natural
has something
thing.
to do with like energy too, though.
And
Like
vibration.
spirit and energy. And
Well, sound waves are energy waves, right?
Yeah.
Like they're. I mean, we
like
hear them
spirits are
via
energy.
sound.
Like we're energy, spirits are energy, music. It's
You know
all
what I'm saying?
connected.
I mean, wait, didn't you do like a whole biorhythm thing? Where it was like you get a massage, but it was via sound, or there was some kind of like psychic thing. Explain what that is.
biofeedback.
Yeah, explain what that is.
It's like I don't know how to explain. It's magical.
It's magic.
But it's basically they're like trying to connect to like your frequency
Yeah.
and see like what's going on in your body through like frequency. Like okay, like when I go to sleep, I listen to binaural beats. I do
Right.
that, and like there's all different hertz and
I was gonna say, and if you go online, if you go to like YouTube, and you put sleep frequency and then let it fill it,
yeah,
there are all these different frequencies
yeah.
that are
from,
supposed to
from
do
like
specific
3.5
things.
to like 600. I think I've used.
And what do you actually find that it helps you?
Oh, it has been helping me. A
Yeah?
lot. Yeah.
It really has?
Yeah, they have all different ones too, like some for healing, some for sleep, some for energy clearing, negative energy clearing. But like I think the point is like there's all these things we don't know enough about
Right.
and
Like
we
our
don't study.
our spectrum of perception
Yeah,
is here, and that
right. Because you know we always talk about we're on different frequencies, of the same frequency, and spirits are energy,
And so those are natural things for like, because you hear the same kind of music stuff, aside from any kind of being drawn to it or anything like
Right.
that. We're shifting slightly, but you always hear people messing with the sound in theaters, ghosts messing with the sound
Right.
in theaters, or playing the piano that's
Right.
in the theater, but there's no one there.
well, because
People
they
go
can
in and they're
control
not.
that stuff. They can control technology.
There's
or
also something.
frequencies.
Try. When we went, I think I told this story recently to you even, or on the show. We went to, oh, I know what it was. It was the Haunted Objects episode, and I was telling the host of Haunted Antiques in DeLand that we went to do an investigation in the infamous Sam West house in the Bridgewater Triangle. And I was there with a few people. We were investigating it. We were filming it for something. And the owner of the house went down to the basement, and he had a bass. He was a bass player. And one by one, all the investigators picked up the bass and started playing it because we were all bass players, right? Like that can't just be a coincidence. Other than bass players are weird, that like we were all drawn to those lower frequencies or played
Yeah.
around with those lower frequencies. And it's always one of the questions I always used to ask, because even if it's not, there's at least folklore wise, like urban legend that like music can do certain things. You know, or
Right.
that like there is a connection between these things. So even if all of like ghosts or frequencies and those kind of things is not real or anything, we think that they are, and it makes sense that they are. And it's a science that we can touch
Right.
because it makes
We're just starting
logical
to get into it though. With different
with
frequencies
understanding.
and-
Yeah, like to actually see that it does something to us
But when you
as
actually
well.
feel it, when you're on site and you can feel, like that time we were in the cemetery, and then all of a sudden it was like,
Everything changed. Yeah.
like you can't
Yeah.
explain it unless you experience it. It has something to do with energy and sound.
And Nancy was mentioning there are places of silence. She was mentioning the zones of silence in Mexico, but there seem to be a lot of places like that where, when we were at, so you were at Oak Ridge. You went to Oak Ridge with us. The other 2 times I've been there without you, when we were at, and we were playing music too, by the way, when we were at the memorial for the Wraiths, the Wraith fighters.
Yeah.
Once again, total dead silence. There was literally a cling, cling, cling of the flagpole, the flag hitting the pole, the cord, that stopped clanging while we were playing the music.
Yeah, it just made me think like that's why we record, because there's this stuff going on that we don't always listen to.
And it's why it's the
We
one
get distracted
thing
by
of evidence
seeing
kind of
things
stuff
and
that we fall back
it
on that we
makes
really
total
do.
Sense.
Um,
Having an epiphany over
so if only there was a legend trip we could do where we could follow the music, where we could listen to the music, maybe even encourage them to play by bringing instruments.
Mm-hmm.
Do you play an instrument well? Do you play your piano?
No, I have a ukulele that I've been trying to learn.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I remember that. Yeah. And I've got one here.
And I have drums and
would it be-
triangles and maracas. I am a
Oh, you are a
kindergarten
kindergarten teacher, so you've got all
I
that
have
stuff,
plenty
right?
of instruments.
Imagine going out to a legend trip where there's a history of ghostly
And
music.
I can sing.
I've never heard you sing
I
ever.
Took singing
Did you really?
at Bridgewater State. I
And
gave a concert.
See how it's
I
all
gave a
connected?
concert.
And we haven't even gotten into the Ormond Witch and everything that was coming off that. Maybe we'll touch on it at the end of this episode. Because we are traveling back up 75, across I-4, to that tropical paradise
The East Coast?
known as Daytona.
Oh, okay.
More specifically, Merritt Island.
Okay.
Now, I was going to say, hey, do you remember our Merritt Island episode? But I know that you don't. We covered it
I
in
do.
116.
Wait, the witch? The witch wall?
No. No, that was, we actually went out to that one. If you had
Oh.
forgotten that would have
Oh.
been dangerous. There would have been other things we needed to talk about.
Okay.
No, a few episodes ago right after that, we did an episode called Haunted Roads,
Mm-hmm.
which is our most banned episode.
What do you mean?
Or I should at least say,
What do you mean band episode?
well, do you remember what you did in the middle of that
Oh, I
episode?
played the song.
You played the song.
I don't
Haunted.
even know what song.
So we've gotten tagged
Oh,
for
we
that
can't
video.
talk about it.
Huh?
We can't talk about what song it was?
Yeah, it was Haunted.
No.
We can talk about the actual song.
Okay, we're not allowed to say something.
It's not Bruno here. Encanto reference there. What was
I thought you were going to say it was a Bruno Mars song, because
No,
I
it's
don't
not a
remember
Bruno
what
Mars
song
song.
it is.
No, it's Country Road, Take Me Home.
Oh, yeah.
Don't sing it
Not
again.
Stairway
Don't
to
sing it
Heaven.
again. Not Stairway to Heaven. We didn't get
That
banned
was
for
another
that.
episode.
But we've actually, that video and the TikTok I made about it that I then put on all these different platforms
Mhm.
has been, taken down time and time again
Because
of that song. Which is really crazy, because I've done all this other music and none of it, it's they're like, you are not able to be heard in Russia and,
Really?
Scandinavian countries. The only
What do
one
they
that's
have
been...
against Country Road?
It's copyright laws. It's not like they're trying to ban
No,
the
but
song.
like you said, we kind of mentioned
I haven't
other
the slightest
stuff.
idea why that's the song that has gotten us in so much trouble.
So if I sang it, would it get banned?
No, don't sing. Do you remember it literally shut off
Yes.
as we were doing it? We were like, what the hell is going on here? So, do you remember that? You at least remember that part of the
I
episode.
do remember that.
We talked about there's this place called Suicide Road.
Driving up to cemeteries that are haunted. I remember.
Yeah, there was a Suicide
Yeah.
Road in Merritt Island. There was
Yeah.
a few other places that were near there. And then remember there was the whole dragon
Yeah.
they have on the edge of the water, the
Oh, yeah.
dragon, and we talked
Annie
about
or
that.
something.
Did you just no, I said that. I said that
No,
name,
you
didn't I?
didn't.
I said that name
You did
earlier.
not. Rewind. You did not.
No, I'm saying not in the episode. I was talking about through. Oh, you remember good old Anne, who was murdered when she was 19.
That's the name of the dragon, I thought.
It is the name. You just read that in here. That's the one notes that I have her about the. Shut up. We're going back to Merritt Island.
Okay.
And by back to Merritt Island, I mean we're going for the first time. But we have another legend to do. So it's totally worth a trip because We now have 4 different things to follow up on
Why,
in that
piano,
area.
is the piano over there?
We've moved from the pianos. The pianos were
Oh,
the
that
hook,
was,
if
yeah,
you will.
to get into singing.
Because we are taking our talents to the East Coast to Mather's Bridge.
Okay.
This is, I think, one of the most unique setups of a haunting that I've heard
In Florida.
in Florida.
Yeah, because there's beautiful haunted bridges everywhere.
Right, but
Florida.
it's the way that this bridge is haunted, which is unique. So, this bridge was built originally in 1927, right?
Okay.
It's only like a 700-foot bridge. It crosses over one little section. There's only 2 ways to get from Merritt Island to, I guess, what you would consider the coast. It's crazy when we were doing that episode. Oh, no, that's something totally different. But in 1925, no, I'm with you because these things have been so interconnected with me over the last week. A guy named John Mathers is going back and forth between his house and work.
Okay.
And he's like, this commute sucks. We need a bridge right here. Because he was having to go
Wait, did we
all
talk
the
about
way
this
up.
already?
Nope, this
I'm
is
having
totally new.
deja vu.
Are you? That means that it's good. So he got some people, he's like, hey, let's do it, then all the backers backed out. Like, no one else wanted to do it. So he paid $40,000. This is in 1925 money. $40,000 of his own money, and he opened up the bridge. And so now there was a northern way to get to and from the island, and then this was the southern way. I'm sorry, his was the northern way to get to and from the island. Because people were having to travel all this way down to the bottom of the island, and then go back up if they were.
Yeah.
So it was a toll bridge. Big money back in those days. If you
was in
were
the paper,
a
right?
pedestrian, right? Huh?
It was in the newspaper. I know this story.
Oh, you do?
I don't know why.
Because you probably read the little like tidbits
No,
on the guy.
it wasn't that. It didn't sound familiar until you start talking about it.
Per people or a single animal, 5 cents to cross the bridge. It was a wood bridge at the time, mainly wood. Horse and rider, 15. There was then a vehicle attached to it. It was 20 cents. If your vehicle was hauled by 2 horses, it went up to a whopping 25 cents. Motorcycles, 15. Cars, 20 cents. And then if you had a car that had, not regardless of whether there were 6 people in it, if it could fit 6 people, 25 cents.
What's that, like a station wagon?
I have no idea. Like a 6-car band.
random.
All I'm imagining because I'm thinking of
Like a paddy wagon?
I think of the 1950s where like you have all those things in the 50s of like all the high school kids like getting into the car, like the telephone booth,
Yeah.
and like cruising with their
Like a
with their
six-passenger car,
varsity
imagine.
sweaters and stuff.
Yeah, like you
Whatever
have
it
a horse
was.
or a 6-passenger car.
I think at that point there was
Maybe like a
probably
wagon thing?
there was probably like
Attached to
transports
something?
going through or like trucks
Yeah.
going through
Okay.
something like that. 1934, Mathers died, so he didn't live too long after the bridge was created. But what's crazy is he dies in the spring, and that fall, his granddaughter and great-granddaughter fall off the bridge and drown.
They were just walking?
So yeah,
Or
they
in
were
a
just
car?
no, they were walking on the
And they
bridge because it was a
both fall off and
pedestrian
drown?
bridge, and they both
Wow.
drowned. Like, so there seems to be something that was kind of, and we're going to talk about this in context of it. I know right now your mind is going, honor the story, tell me about the ghost, but I feel like I have to give a little bit of this back.
No, it's not actually.
Because it almost like from its creation had some kind of weird connection to death of the paranormal. I'm not going to go so far as to say hunger. In 1952, it was moved. It's a hand crank bridge, right? And so, like back in the day, they used to like, hey, can I do it? It's like, have you done all your homework? Then you can crank the bridge.
What do you mean?
So
like,
rather
it
than a
goes up when a
drawbridge,
boat comes?
rather than a drawbridge
Yeah.
that goes up, it goes sideways like this. It goes so here's the bridge,
Yeah.
right? When a boat's coming, the whole bridge turns from like
Wow.
horizontal to
So
vertical.
it's just like a big rope?
Well, it's a crank. They crank it.
Oh,
A rope.
like a simple machine.
Like pulling it that way. Does that make sense? So it goes from this way to this way, and then the boats can
No,
pass.
I meant like that's still attached to the other
Nancy,
side.
thanks for coming in. No, I guess it technically isn't because now the road is out in the water, and then it shifts
That's
back in this
crazy.
way.
I want to see that.
Well, thank heavens. 2022 it closed because it was in such poor condition. A lot of it had corroded. there was damage to both the bridge and the parts that that like rotated,
It was
like
like
the
100 years
mechanisms
old,
of it, right? In the water, right? 100
Yeah.
years old
In
in the
Florida.
water, and the
In
guy who
Florida.
built it was like,
You know how
all I'm just
anything,
trying to do is
anything
get to work.
lasts outside?
Exactly. So I'm looking like, oh shit, it's closed, because he also said it was dangerous to walk on. So I was like, well, the whole point is we want to walk on it. For what we're gonna do, we want to walk on it. Is it open? Is it closed? Is it open? Is it closed? Right? And I'm looking at Google, and some things are saying that it's closed. And then I found an article that was written later on, and that article is saying that it's open. Right? So I'm like, oh shit, good. Like, and I'm like, but is it? You'd be so proud of me. I called
Wow.
the bridge keeper today,
Really?
and I'm like,
What's his name?
are you open? He didn't say.
The bridge keeper.
He literally answered the phone, Mathers Bridge, and I was like, I was so surprised because it was the third number I had called because the rest ones were all disconnected, and I was like, oh shit, I'm talking to a real person on the phone, right? Like, how often do we talk on the phone? And I was like, hey, I'm doing some research, da da da, and I'm like, is the bridge open? And he's like, yeah, and I'm like, is the bridge open for people? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, is the bridge open for cars? I have no idea who this guy thought I was, but the excitement in my voice that it was like, and I was going like, is it open for motorcycles? Is it open for dogs? Is it open for... And then I was like, is it open for boats?
Is it open for cars? You didn't answer.
It's open for cars.
Okay.
It's open for cars. It's also open for boats again.
Does it still do that same thing?
Same, yeah. It's not an unusual way for, like, those are the two ways. There's drawbridges, and
Where
then
is there
there's...
another bridge that goes like this? I've never even heard
There's
of
a
that.
ton of them. That's a whole other different episode.
Okay.
Um,
Well, when you said swing bridge, I thought it was like.
Oh, I
those
get
ones
you.
walk across.
I thought you were going to say you only walk across if you're listening to swing music.
No,
Like,
those
nah,
ones
nah,
that
nah,
are like,
nah.
swinging. Like
That's
in
my
a tree
swing.
house.
So it's open. We can walk the bridge.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, shh. And I was like, okay, thank you. And I hung up and I was like, oh, shit, I forgot to ask him about the ghosts.
Yeah, I was like, can
So
you
I was
get
like,
to
I
that story now?
actually got a person on the phone.
Ghost story.
There used to be a restaurant. It was called the Merritt Island. Oh my word! It was called the Mathers Bridge Restaurant. Typical seafood fare, all that kind of good stuff. But it got closed down. When it got closed down, a lot of the people who lived on Merritt Island felt as if like a part of their history had been taken away from them, right? It was originally opened in 1940.
Wait, the guy had a bridge? The restaurant wasn't.
The restaurant was just called that, right? Like it was
After
just
the
like, you
bridge.
know,
Okay,
right.
Yeah, okay.
1940s it opened. Was open for 50 years, closed in 1992. And some people feel that it was like a part of their heritage was taken away, right?
Mhm.
Like this was our history. This was our, and there were a lot of people who were upset. To this day, the people in the neighborhood, as well as a lot of the fishermen, report that at night, after the sun goes down, and especially on the weekends, you can hear a party coming from the water.
Okay.
You can hear loud music being played. You can hear
Piano?
people laughing. You can hear piano, yeah. You're literally hearing music coming from the water, but there's no source for it. There's no echoes. It's not like a weird place where they're
Yeah,
it's just
that
happening
weird water
someplace
thing
else.
that your niece was talking about?
No, this is instead of being like oh, like weird like
Sounds.
singing or whatever,
Yeah.
like siren sing. This is like full music, but you just hear it like under, so you can't catch. Like if it's a specific song or something like that, you can just hear
It's like background.
the slang, like the clinking of glasses, as if like people are like having a jolly good time,
Okay.
right? Like
Uh-huh.
as if this bar is still up and running, right? And you only hear it on one side of the water. You can't hear it on the other side of the water. And people have been
The side where the
describing
restaurant
this for
was?
years. The side where the restaurant was.
Okay.
They've been reporting it pretty much since it was closed. As a matter of fact, it's kind of one of those things they tell to the younger fishermen, and the younger fishermen are like, okay, whatever, like, no.
Yeah.
And then
They hear it.
they're not considered like an official fisherman of Merritt Island until they've heard it. And they say that you can tell when the people have heard it because they'll come back and their faces have like changed. Like their faces are like white because they've heard this
Okay.
music, because they've heard all the stuff attached to it as well, like the stories attached to it.
Does water hold like spirit sounds more than
Well,
not?
the interesting thing is that there are reports of that, right? Like that there's a direct connection between water and the paranormal, water and ghosts. We've covered several times the ideas that ghosts can't pass running water, right?
Right.
And so whatever energy there might be there that might dissipate can't dissipate, right? The spirits can't move from that area because they can't cross the water,
Right.
right? And so therefore they are stuck in that area. There's a few, and here's where I know it's gonna, I know this part's gonna interest you. It connects the southernmost tip of Merritt Island to Indian Harbor Beach, right? So it connects South Tropical Trail to Banana River Drive, which is a pretty damn cool Banana River Drive.
Yes.
There are two reasons that are given, two aspects, like two kind of prongs of this folklore as to why the ghosts are there. No one can explain the ghosts. Are they a psychic recording? Right? Like, is it some party that went bad at some point?
So there's no bad
And so
stories at
it's-
the restaurant,
The restaurant is gone away.
right?
There was a hotel across the street that burned in a mysterious fire.
Okay.
Some people feel that the area has some kind of odd curse to it. If not a curse, then at least a spell. Because there was an artist, here's where the part where you're going to like, there was an artist by the name of Kevin Tipton who I've tried to reach out to. Every single article I was able to find, which you really can only find in relation to this, talks about two things. His amazing art, or three things. His amazing art, his love of the natural wildlife, and the fact he was a witch.
Oh.
And so people feel, because he did a lot of work on the murals outside of the restaurant, right? He did all this stuff under that. He did all these murals and paintings in the hotel, and both of them were destroyed within years of each other.
From hurricane?
Well, they tore down one, right? They tore down the restaurant,
Oh yeah.
and the hotel burnt down
Oh. With his artwork.
with his artwork there. The only thing that remains, they say, in Florida of his artwork is there's kind of an abandoned statue that's called the Watcher. The Watcher, he created to be a guardian for all of the animal life. If you remember, that Suicide Road was in the Merritt Island Natural Reserve. So
Yep.
it's definitely a place that's known for its animals and its connection to nature. So he loved the restaurant. He loved
Did
to
we
go
talk
there.
about that area being like
Yeah,
the grounds or?
yeah. Because we talked about all these
Yeah.
different cemeteries that were there.
Mhm.
Manatees. He was a huge fan of the manatees. So the manatees come up again, right? Schools of fish, tritons. Oh wait, I'm not wearing the right hat. I should have worn my tritons hat. Tritons, and then mermaids. So he would paint these things. The Watcher, which is like they said, the only thing that remains, is it's a statue of a sphinx, right? Without a head.
He made it that way?
From
Or
everything that
off.
I'm reading, he made it to have no head, which I think is weird because
Yeah.
isn't a sphinx
Uh-huh.
a lion with the head of a human? So if you have a headless sphinx, isn't it just a lion? Like, how do you know it's a sphinx if it doesn't have a human head?
Is that what a sphinx is?
It's a lion with a human head.
Okay.
Some people feel that there was something having to do with that kind of some spell that was in the way that he was doing the artwork or something like that, that led to some kind of spiritual this becoming some kind of spiritual center and trapping these ghosts there.
Because of his art?
Because of his art. Because his art was so connected to also his nature and the way that he practiced his witchcraft.
Oh.
And so,
Okay.
because everything talks about him being a witch.
Okay.
Or a, they identify him as a Wiccan, but we can use these terms somewhat interchangeably here. So that's reason
So
one.
it's like he did a spell.
Right. And maybe it was like a protection spell because he had all this love, but maybe in that protection spell, it like kept spirits there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like as an
Yeah,
after
spirits can be
effect,
protecting.
as an after effect of this.
Mm-hmm.
So it at least like points to some weird background having to do with this. And like I said, the hotel burned down. Why did the restaurant close?
You couldn't
That
find
was
out?
no, I totally did. It's
Oh.
the next thing I'm going to talk about. But that's totally natural to be like, oh, it was destroyed in a hurricane, right?
Right.
We know this from where we're from in Massachusetts, what we've seen just here, the idea of gentrification, all that stuff like that. The demographics of Merritt Island changed dramatically. It went from, we've both spent a lot of time on Cape Cod, right?
Mm-hmm.
It went from townies to overpriced homes, mansions, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
As the face of Merritt Island changed, as the demographics changed, the people moving in who were now spending millions of dollars to build these homes there started to complain about the noise.
Oh, they didn't want like a little dive bar.
They didn't
They
like
wanted like a yacht
the
club.
traffic. They didn't like the cars. I guess there were only, I think it said 17 parking spaces.
Mhm.
And so people would park on the other,
Oh,
on the
at
other
the
island,
restaurant. Okay.
right? And then they'd cross the bridge. It's only 700 feet, right?
Yeah.
But then they'd get all drunk and shit.
Right.
And they would all to all hours of the
And there
night
was, like,
they'd
a
be
townie
they'd be
dive bar.
partying on the bridge at this
Uh-huh.
towny type dive
Yeah,
bar
uh-huh.
where
Where everybody knows your name.
and the word which I found interesting, right? They kept using this word consistently in every article.
Hippies?
Hippies. It kept saying there was a hippie vibe in the bar.
What does that
That
mean?
exactly.
Weed or something?
But it was right. I mean, you don't think of like. First of all,
A
we're
bar.
talking. It was closed in the '90s.
No
So,
water?
like, are we talking like '80s hippies? Like, were they hippies wearing neon?
Or they were just like they were hippie. They were from the hippie era.
It's never clear exactly what they mean by the term hippies.
60s, 70s, 80s,
But
like 50-year-olds.
that phrase is repeated on paranormal websites as well as
yeah, you know
in
those
general.
things, copy things. Though?
No, I'm with you. Except for it was in real publications too. So real magazines,
Oh,
real
not
news
just
articles,
That one bad.
and in people's recollections. People would say like, "Oh yeah, you know, all the hippies in that place. People got tired of them."
That's what we always talk about hippies.
Then what did I say? That we were going to be talking about
We
hippies
like don't
later.
talk about it.
Don't talk about
Don't
hippies.
talk about it.
So what do you think about the hippie vibe would connect to ghosts?
Well, I was saying a hippie is someone that really likes music and they're open to things and love. To me, a hippie is love, music, open, free, like into not not the average.
I mean, we have this perception, but which, by the way, when I was talking about Woodstock with Ella a little bit ago, she was like, "Oh, was Guns N' Roses at Woodstock?"
Oh my god.
Like thinking Guns N' Roses were at the original Woodstock. But then also today when I was speaking about alternative music and like Nirvana and Alice in Chains, people were like, "And the Beatles," and I was like, "You're off by a few decades." But
these people are not
there's
hippies.
this perception of a weird free spirituality of hippies.
But I think music has a big part of it.
No, I
And
totally
we think
agree
about
with you.
music from like the Wonder Years, but it's not just.
No, I mean like yeah, I mean
It's music anytime, really.
I think we think tie dye, right? We think flowing because I was describing someone. I said they had a hippie look to them.
That's like the original hippie. That's like the OG.
The OG. But I think there's a definite connection between hippies and music.
Yes.
Like I think we think of them almost kind of interchangeably. When you think of hippies, most people the first thing they're going to think of is Woodstock, right? Which is a music festival, right? Like this idea that there is some
And like free this too,
physically
though,
a
and
freeness,
Yeah.
a drug use, drugs that were intended
your
to
body.
open your mind
Yeah.
and things like that.
yeah, that's what I mean. It's free mind.
So it's really
music.
weird that this word is used time and time to describe the patrons of this bar, because it also doesn't seem
Could
to
you
fit
look
in
up
with
people that live
a
there?
towny bar.
You know
Like
what I
look
mean?
up actual tax
Residents?
records.
Yeah, or like newspaper articles about people, like what was going on at this time.
I've tried to do certain things because I was trying to find information of why did the fire happen, like how the fire happened, and I tried for hours today, using Ancestry. So I still have my Ancestry account to try to get newspaper articles or something about the
Right.
people who lived there, and I was not able to find why this or how this bar
You haven't connected to the
or
local,
what the hotel name was. I haven't been able to find out the name of the hotel.
connected to the local historian in the town.
That's the next step, right? I really feel this is a good boots on the ground thing.
Is
Like,
there good libraries
go
over
there, we'll find
Museums,
out. We'll bring,
libraries.
we'll take our instruments. We'll take our. I really feel as if we could probably go to the other part of it, right? So we can go to the mainland and find people who are going to remember the bar. They're going to remember the restaurant. Excuse me. They're going to remember when it closed. They're going to remember these things. I feel this is the kind of legend trip where the day is spent gathering information and the night is spent
Listening.
trying to get someone to play your ukulele in the moonlight. So I think this is going to be a really fun one. Does this sound like something you'd be hip on doing?
Yeah.
Beautiful. When you're ready,
Yippee.
you want to go now?
Let's go now.
Taking off right now?
Mhm.
Beautiful. What you doing this weekend?
What am I doing this
yeah,
weekend?
we gonna be heading off or what? No, probably not. But we will be doing soon. Hopefully, we'll be able to get to this soon. President's Day is coming up. That would be a great way. Maybe we can find
I
when
don't have
Mathers
those
actually
holidays
died. And you can follow us on that legend trip. Hashtag
Hippies?
Hashtag ghost hippies.
Ghost hippies.
Hashtag ooh no.
Haunted
Hashtag
ghost-
haunted
haunted-
hippies. Yeah, right. Is that what you're gonna say?
Yeah.
Good. Hashtag haunted
Haunted
hippies.
hippies.
Hopefully we'll be able to do this. You can follow that on any of our social media. That would be if you go to facebook.com/tripping on legends, or if you go to Instagram and you go to Spooky Tripping. Twitter is Spooky Balzano, and you can follow it with hashtag haunted hippies or anything that we're doing. We put out a lot of social media. We put out little stories that are connected to this that I've been finding all week. I've been putting out, and we still didn't get to the Ormond Witch. So I might have to do an episode without you where I delve into the Ormond Witch, because you were saying do one without you. This might be that might be a good one to do without you, even though you're like, that sounds kind of interesting. You can follow all of that stuff and subscribe, and make sure that you are making our legend trips part of your spooky narrative. I feel like this is something we can do. We now have 4 different things to do in that area, so a weekend is totally not we're traveling 4 hours to hang out on a bridge for 10 minutes. This is definitely something we
I
can
would
do.
do that.
Yeah. What instrument would you bring other than your ukulele?
I have a triangle and a drum, tambourine.
Maybe the
Okay,
tambourine would be better than
yeah.
the drum, because right now I'm imagining you like old school, like someone with a flute next to you, and you've got a bandage on, and you're playing the drum like the old school like
Did you say bandage?
Minutemen. Yeah, you know the thing of like they're playing the flute and the drum.
Bandage?
I'll show it to you afterwards.
I don't know.
I am Christopher Balzano,
I'm Deanna Mulhern.
and here's hoping that all of your trips.
Our legendary.
I'm telling you, I've got to think of like what instrument I can bring, because that's like not like I can bring my whole. I'm not gonna bring my whole bass and amp up there.